Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. Each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry. Now, today we're lucky enough to have a remarkable guest joining us, Thi Nguyen-Huu, who is CEO at WinMagic Corp. Thi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, nice. Good morning, Barry.
Good morning, thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Yep, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Perfect, it's a pleasure.
I have not done really this before, so I'm looking forward to have something new today.
Good. So we'll be the first people to speak with you about this. That makes it even better. So we'll get the scoop from you. So thank you for coming on to the podcast. We really appreciate it. Could you just tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and the company that you work at?
I'm from Vietnam. I went to Germany when I was 18. I studied there. I lived 17 years in Germany, have my own company before I moved to Canada. And there I, also continue to have my own company. And at one point in time, around 94, I get involved in cryptography. And I like it so much. I changed everything to do just cryptography mainly. And that's where we are today.
Perfect. Did you always know that you were going to be a CEO or an entrepreneur? Or was it something that you just happened to come across?
Not at all. I happened to be in Boy Scout when I was very young. And I think I have been always timid, and it pushed me because I have been long there. I become a leader of the team lead and so on. But I'm always the youngest, and I'm always think I shouldn't be the leader. As it turned out, I have to be the CEO, and I have to do obnoxious thing and make decision. And I'm here today. I think very different from when I was young before, but. That's interesting about life, yes.
Yeah, so it looks like you've been through a lot of development. Was that an easy transition for you to make from being timid and shy to being the leader of a CEO?
For some reason, it was not difficult for me. I mean, even though I was timid, even though I think, who am I to tell anybody anything? I think somewhat correctly, and I think I have to get the work done. And so I learned that if I don't be very clear and so on, then it doesn't work out. So I get into it. And I mean, even as a CEO, I somehow have the luxury of doing the thing I like. And I try to fight the people and do other things. I mean, I'm not very successful at the end for everything, but I kind of enjoy it. And that's how it still go. Yeah.
That's the important thing, right? That you do enjoy it. Does it feel like a job to you, or does it feel like pleasure, like a hobby?
It's funny thing. I work very hard. I wake up in the morning, maybe at 5 sometimes, most of the time, because I have some problem, mainly technical problem I have to solve and so on. But I have a lot of hobbies. And I would probably think, maybe it's not true, but I think I would prefer to play guitar or play tennis than to look at the cybersecurity problem and solve them. I solve them because I think I know stuff. I have to solve them, maybe to change something better in the world. But it's funny, I used to like martial arts, and a lot of sport, I still do them, but less than before because I'm busy, I'm older as well. But I even say, I can't stop my job tomorrow. Maybe that's not true.
So you mentioned there some of the hobbies. Do you find it easy to have that work-life balance, or do you find yourself always working even when you shouldn't be?
I find it easy. And if you look at my, the Microsoft tracking and so on, they will say I never have any quiet time, quiet day and so on. I'm always busy. But, maybe at 10 in the morning, I play guitar. Or at 11 in the morning, I play tennis, and I feel, I always have something to do, which I mostly like. And of course, beside all the hustle and then worries about the business. But yeah, I think, just using the right time. And the main thing is you don't have stress, don't worry. I mean, the worry is that it makes it cumbersome and all kind of thing. But people today, nobody work so hard that they get hardship from working hard.
So you've been through quite a journey, haven't you, in your life? So going from Vietnam to Germany, setting up your own company, and also going to Canada. How have you changed through living in other countries? Is it something that has had a big impact on you?
I grew up in a family where my parents are kind of intellectual. They are the principal of the two largest school in my city, and so on. But I think what for me partly big time is when I was in Germany, independently living, and so I worked hard before, but living independently gives you own kind of life lesson, and I contribute part of it to it. Also, the German work very hard as well. So I learned some good things from Germany, I think, as well. Life is funny. I remember my geography teacher asked us once, how do you define happiness in life? And we say whatever we said. And he say, this hero, I mean, we know about all the heroes in the history, right? All these heroes you admire and so on, all of them have a hardship. They work very hard. If you think about happiness, like they relax, they enjoy life, maybe there's no moment in their life where they are happy that way. So happiness is defined different for different people, and it's up to you how to make your life happy.
Can you remember what answer you gave when you were asked that question? Was that, can't you remember?
I was timid. I didn't give an answer. but I do say later on in life, I think one of the most important thing in life is the more time you have happiness, the more fulfilling you have. Of course, your happiness should be, I don't know, about other people as well, not just, your own happiness. But yeah, that is important.
So what teachings do you bring from your upbringing in Vietnam that you've used now that you've set up and running a CEO? Do you still have those teachings in your mind? And if so, what teachings did you keep in there?
I don't think I really try to teach people too much, but I think I do want to give them help so that they can do everything better. At one point in time, I even learned that I was in the course and they say, what do you do in the company? And I say, I try to run the company. I try to help a little bit here and there. But then they ask questions like, do you help them on the spirit side? Do you help them on all kind of thing? And it turns out when I think about it, I'm proud to say I do help them, not only about, giving them a job, but also tell them here and there, and a healthy body and a good spirit, mind, and I don't know. It becomes more and more important to me. I mean, if you have the means to do something impactful, we end up doing that, and I slowly recognize it, and so yeah, okay. But since you ask, okay, right now I have workshop or have a lesson to teach our team the WinMagic CK10, I think for 8 years already. For every week, I teach them for an hour about so-called integral Tai Chi for their health and well-being and so on. I like it, and I try to help the team as I could.
So I hear that focusing on helping others is a big part of your mindset, and it's great to hear that. So how do you make... Sorry, you're going to say something, please?
It's funny. It comes from Boy Scout. Yeah? In Vietnam, I was in Boy Scout, and I learned, for example, you have to help every day help a person, for example. Or you have to be liking people, liking whatever. And for some reason, when I was so young, that is in my mind, and I keep it all my life, and I think it just good. It make everything else better. And so yes, I think helping people is a good thing. Yes.
Thank you. It is a win-win situation, isn't it? When
Yes.
you help other people, they feel better and they want to help others, right?
Correct. Correct. Pay it forward, win-win. Okay. For me, fairness is also about win-win. And I don't want to do something which harm me and help other people. But if you can think enough about all kind of thing, and most of the time you try to have a win-win. And for me, fairness is very important. I wouldn't do anything which harm my partner.
Perfect. Lovely. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, have you ever had times in your life or career as a CEO where the needs of the business might conflict with the well-being of staff? And if you've ever had such a scenario, how do you navigate that?
I guess I must have many of those things, but probably at the end I give the excuse, whether or not it's excuse, that if I continue to do this kind of thing, it's not only harmful for us or for business, but also harmful for the individual because, it's against their will and so on. So I make some decision here and there because I believe that in the long term, it's also harmful for the other party.
Yeah, so it's got long-term implications, right? So you might get a short-term profit, but actually long-term, it's going to end up a deficit.
Yes, and that for us and for the other side as well. Maybe the decision seemed to be negative for that person, but let's say if the person is not doing the job very well because it's not what he's liking, then maybe switching the job is a better long-term solution for them.
I understand. These are the trials and tribulations of the CEO, right? Every day.
I do. It happens several times that I tell the person, but then I keep them, let's say for a while until he finds another job. But that's a while. It may take even 2 years. And at the end, it was fine with me.
Yeah, it speaks from your upbringing, right? You have a very modest, humble, and very pro-worker attitude from what I'm hearing from you. Can you just tell us a little bit about WinMagic Corp? Just for anyone who's watching now who doesn't actually know what you do, can you just tell us briefly a bit more about WinMagic Corp?
I founded the company in 1997. I think I'm pretty good at what I'm doing about software engineering and so on. And in year 1998, I got a difficult project from the NSA. Okay, something kind of I think nobody else can do. In any case, from that project, we leapfrog into very cool full disk encryption company to protect the laptop. And I believe that we have the best full disk encryption product, and we raised the bar for many, many years. Okay? We didn't do very well on the sales and marketing side at the end. And so 5 years ago, I tried to do something on the authentication side, on the remote authentication side. And, I had some idea about authentication and cryptography and all. Okay? But then I think at one point I say the whole world has been wrong about remote authentication. I use our expertise, what we have for the last 20 years to bring up something very cool. And now I will talk about that. Okay?
Please. Yeah, perfect.
So let me ask you a few questions. For example, today, everybody is worrying about cybersecurity, about online attack. And the industry spend a lot of money on that. The businesses and consumer and government all seem to be on the losing side against the cyber attack. So the question may be, maybe is it very difficult to do the authentication? Is authentication maybe a unsolvable problem? Okay? Because the whole world spent $1 billion to make everything more secure. Why did they not succeed? Okay? And my answer to you is maybe provoking. Okay, authentication may be an unsolvable problem to the world. That's why they could not solve the problem. And let me explain more. Okay, if you have to verify a user, and even online, okay, which everything you cannot see the person, everything through the network, and everything become data which can be manipulated and so on. So online is very difficult, but even if you have to verify a person, in front of you, okay? So you can see the person, it may be your friend for 20 years, but as we all know, that person could be Tom Cruise. Like, you don't know. It may be just Tom Cruise, right? So it is very difficult to verify a user. And if you have a machine, a very high-end biometrics machine to verify a user, how accurate is it? Would you be, accurate if you verify, the other 1 million user or 1 billion user or even 8 billion user of all the users in the world? Would you or would the machine be able to verify the person from the other 8 billion? So that is very difficult, and maybe it's kind of unsolvable online to verify a user. But if you don't verify the user, but you verify the computer, the endpoint the user used when accessing the online account instead. Everything the user do through the endpoint, but nobody can talk to a website directly. Everything has to go to the endpoint. If you think about verify the endpoint instead of the user, the endpoint has a cryptography chip. If you use cryptography in the chip, not only you can verify the endpoint from all endpoints in the world, but it's not about 8 billion, it's trillions, zillions, everything. The whole world cannot attack and cannot break even one verification of the endpoint for thousands of years. And so if you just verify the endpoint instead of the user, the accurate verification will be very good. And so if we then now verify the endpoint instead of the user and let the endpoint verify the user or whatever else, okay, none of the attack today would have succeeded. You see, today, the attacker, as we most know, the attacker was not the authorized user, and the attacker did not use the computer, the endpoint, which belonged to the user. And if you just verify that endpoint, it takes a millisecond, and none of the attack occurred. And so, see, so we know about the endpoint, we know how to use a crypto chip on the endpoint, and so we believe that the way we do it, it can make the cyberspace a safe place in terms of online account takeover. Does it make sense to you?
Yes, it does make sense. It's really interesting that you say that. It sounds so natural when you say it like that. It sounds so obvious, but obviously that hasn't always been the case, has it? What kind of thought process did you come up with for that?
Because I know cryptography, I like cryptography, like I said. Okay, I do this encryption, which is very difficult. But then I think about authentication and I see the world is worrying about all of that. So I decide one time I look into it. And I use like a FIDO and cryptography and public key and so on. And I say, why do people use a phone? Because the phone is easy to develop on, but the endpoint is much better and so on. So I try to say to use the endpoint, and if we use the phone like through the Bluetooth and so on and so on. But after maybe 6 months, I say, if you use the endpoint and the endpoint verify the user anyway, because the endpoint has always verified the user, you have to log in the endpoint, and if after inactivity time, you have to unlock the endpoint again and so on. So if you use the endpoint as authentication device and let the endpoint verify the user, you achieve the most secure solution in the world today with no user action. Completely no user action. Because the endpoint verify the user already. The user don't have to do more than verify to the endpoint. Yeah? And so I try to say I use the endpoint instead of the phone. I use the phone as well and so on. So I do this and that and say we have the most choice until we say all the choice is irrelevant. What's relevant is user doesn't have to do anything. People used to say, user is the weakest link of the cybersecurity and so on. But actually it's not. User shouldn't have to do anything on remote access or on authentication. The vendors, the industry was wrong in the first place. And that is amazing. Everybody in the world talk about passwordless authentication, MFA, but they don't really differentiate between access to the endpoint and access to everything else. Because we say access to the endpoint, you use MFA, you use password, you use whatever, access to the endpoint. But for everything else, there's no MFA, no passwordless, nothing, no user. Okay. And I think that is only a part of the whole thing. I mean, there is also all the equation and for network, the server, and all the ecosystem partner contribution. But I think the idea is correct. Cyber attack as it is today will no longer be successful. Maybe new attack will come up and so on. But for now, I think it will be completely changed from before.
Do you feel like it's normally a cat and mouse game where the system's always trying to catch up with the criminals, or do you think that's about to change now and it will be different?
I think it's about to change. Yeah. Like you go from verify the user password, which, very difficult to do, and verify the biometric or whatever, which is not very accurate when you think about 8 billion all the possible mix-up, okay? But if you think that about the cryptography ability of separating of zillion thing, it will be very different. And it's a bit difficult for the whole world to change everything. And the whole world, I mean, a lot of companies, I think, you see, probably many people understand somewhat what I think, okay? But it's a bit difficult to implement. And so people switch to implement something which is, I call, technologically incorrect. It's not the natural solution, but people cannot do the real one, so they do the fake one, and they have to do all kind of different things. For example, using the endpoint is good. You want to verify the user and the endpoint. But why? 99% of the world solution today use the phone. With the phone, you can verify the phone with cryptography and so on. But then the phone is not the endpoint. So the attacker attack that you do something on the phone, but then the service is given to the endpoint. Mm-hmm. And then, there's even more bottleneck the industry bringing up. For example, most people today have the PC and the phone. So they can use a PC to access online account, and if something goes wrong with the PC, they take the phone. Or if they take something in the phone wrong, they take the PC. Okay? But they won't use the phone to make the authentication device for the PC. So you have the bottleneck for the phone, and so you have the phone back bottleneck and all that artificially. And that's because people cannot use the endpoint as authentication device. So
that situation, as you described it, is relevant to me. I do exactly that. If I do it on the PC and I can't do it, I just go to the phone and try it on there. And I do it just as you've described it. So it definitely happens like that in the real world. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it should. And you don't need the phone to authenticate the PC. The PC with the TPM on it, not only that, since you use a PC with the TPM, you don't need any phone, any USB token and anything, okay? And the PC itself can continuously verify with the server without user action. So instead of not verifying, keeping the session for an hour, the PC can talk to the server every 5 minutes or whatever, depending on the situation, without you knowing anything.
And that's what we like. We like convenience for the user, everything that makes life easier for the user, right?
Right. I mean, our main buzzword is no user action. Okay, but at the same time, the security of our authentication is, I would say, more secure than anything else out there. More secure because it uses the latest protocol based on cryptography, but then it can do it as often as it wants. And also, you see, there's also other thing which since we are talking, okay, the zero trust is the new principle the whole world aspire. Say that is what you need to have a stronger security, zero trust. Okay? Zero trust say that you should verify the user and the device for each application, for each transaction. Each transaction means every minute you get an email, you should verify the user. Okay? Of course, it cannot be done. Okay? But then if you switch around and you apply the computer, the programming concept that interrupt is better than polling. So the event-driven update, meaning, for example, we are friends and I ask you to do something urgently. But then I have to ask you every second, every minute, did you do it? Did you do it? It is a waste of time. It should be, I ask you to do something, and whenever you do it, in a few minutes, in a few hours, you just come back to me and kind of interrupt me and say, yeah, it's done, okay? So if we use interrupt instead of polling, and the endpoint will give all the information to the server, so it's not only is faster, it use no bandwidth, everything is better than before. Again, because you trust the endpoint. Okay? The endpoint is the friend. I mean, the endpoint for the online user can be like a car and a self-driving car, a trusted self-driving car, and so on. We know the endpoint. We put a lot of workload to the endpoint so that we achieve the fact that the user doesn't have to do anything anymore.
I love the way you explain it. You make it sound so simple for me. Thank you for taking that. It sounds really interesting, actually, and it's kind of an exciting field, isn't it? And it's one that's only going to get more relevant in the future. If you had your crystal ball and you could predict the future, can you see a much higher demand? I mean, we've only just come out of the pandemic. I imagine that has been a big boost in terms of usage. I know in the UK, I don't know Canada, but I know lots of businesses were starting to allow their employees to work from home, and that requires authentication. So I suppose the question I'm asking is, has the pandemic had a big impact on the way that your company performs? And what do you see as the future for your company, bearing in mind coming headwinds?
I answered in a few different aspects, right? First off, the idea of remote authentication doesn't have anything to do with the pandemic. People use it more, but in general, remote is good. You don't have to travel and pollute the world even more if you don't have to. Yeah? And so the fact that we figured out during the pandemic and so on is kind of random, I would say. Yeah? But you see, I believe strongly the idea is correct. Why do you ask the user to do something difficult for the user? You see, the accurate verification have to be based on cryptography today, on public key cryptography. And that the user have no idea how to do it, right? So machine can do it in millisecond, user cannot do it. And so that will change the cybersecurity space, I believe. It's just a matter of time. Actually, Google, Apple, and Microsoft go in that direction as well. They announced something similar to that, but I believe that we recognize it earlier than the big players, and we have implemented more than whatever. In any case, the other thing is about the pandemic. We have to work at home. This beautiful office, we have not used it for 3 years. I come here maybe twice a month. Yes? But in our company, I find the productivity from working from home is double, is much better than before. People don't go coffee, people don't go to whatever. We can have 5-10 meetings a day. So in our software development company, I think most of us will work from home. Okay? Our VP of marketing, want to see more people, but that's another story.
there's always conflicting interests, isn't there, in the company? So I understand that. And what about the future? So we talked a little bit about the past there. I mean, it's not going to go anywhere, is it? There's always going to be a demand for this. So would you say that prospects are looking rosy, or are there difficulties ahead?
If for some reason the industry don't apply this, and I don't see a reason why not, the cybersecurity will be a different space. Because actually Google tried that before with this thing. I mean, it was more complicated. You have to buy a YubiKey, a USB token, and so on. Okay, but the success rate is 100%. No attack could be successful after that. So it's just a matter of implement that more, and there's no user action. And you see, the idea apply even for the website cookie. If you use the cookies, and instead of a normal cookie like today, the website cookie, you take a cookie which require the TPM, the crypto chip on the PC to sign the message every time. Nobody can attack you anymore. Like consumer, nobody can take over the account from Twitter or Facebook or PayPal for consumer anymore until the attacker steal the laptop or the PC of the user and then have to hack it and so on. So, I mean, and you see, software is eating the world. I would give it away free for all consumer in the world if I have my way. And I think it will change completely. The attacker go into business government is one thing, but go into, I don't know, some consumer who don't have money and so on is another thing. And I don't know if it comes to it, but I would be happily doing my part.
You're
To
making the
give
world
it
a better
away.
place one way or another, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you very much for that. It's really interesting to hear your perspective on it, and it's nice to hear you have a very personal and human touch when you're describing the products, and that's very refreshing. Especially for a CEO. They may not be renowned for their philanthropy and common decency, but it's nice and refreshing to hear that from you. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank
So
you very much. Yeah.
no problem. If we talk about, okay, employment and what kind of people do you see bringing value to your workplace? What kind of qualities do you look for in people when you're hiring them?
It's also a very interesting thing. I mean, the way I think it, I think, maybe different from other a little bit. Yeah. First off, I'm quite competitive and I want to do things. Our mission statement is, we achieve this and that, this encryption, secure data, but I always keep with high standard and strong ethics. Strong ethics, of course, is important, and high standard because I don't know. I like sophistication. I like aesthetic view of things, and high standard. I mean, I like it. But so at one point, people ask me, the team define what do we do, define our company, and I say, okay, we have a high performing team. Yeah? But then we discuss further, and they say high performing team means if people don't perform highly, you have to let them go. I switch completely. I say, oh, no. Okay, if so, I don't want to be a high performing team anymore. We are a family oriented company. We do our best. But you see, I am an immigrant myself. I didn't speak English perfectly or well at all. We have many immigrants in our company who don't speak English and so on. So it's okay not to be a high performing company. But then I think people want challenges. People want to do all kind of good thing normally and so on. And so for me, even when I high level executive, I think mostly it's common sense. It's common sense. Of course, you want to help, you want to work with other people, you want to grow the company, and sometimes there's conflict and so on. But for me, the common sense, understanding mankind, human, and so on, are the most important trait in our company.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that. So, how do you navigate challenges when you've got conflicting interpersonal networks? You don't have to give examples, but just generally, when you have two sets of people who may have conflicting ideas about how to do something or how to progress the company.
Okay, of course, I spend a lot of time thinking how to, solve the problem fairly and correctly, beneficial of a win-win situation for all. Okay, and most of the time, I ask my team and my wife. So, and of course, we don't solve all the problem all the time, but I think we do our best and we take it seriously. It's important for people's lives. Yeah.
It sounds like collaboration is a focus for you.
Yes.
That's one of the top things.
Yeah.
Do you wear many hats in your company? Are you an expert at everything, or do you specialize in one particular field?
The answer is yes.
A lot of CEOs do, right?
Yeah. I'm still do the product design today. I don't code. I don't write code for a long time already. I used to be very good with that, but I think I'm a good software engineer. And actually, I tell you something interesting for me as well. I read somewhere a software engineer is a beast, meaning a good software engineer can do things another 100 software engineer cannot do. Okay, they think of something and so on. Their organization skill put things together so that you can go to some path better than others. Man. And then I think about about security software. If you write up application what is important is that how application behaves, how if it solves a problem and so on. But if you write a security software, it's not only that is important, it's important how you go there so that the path is not going anywhere else so that people can attack it. Yeah? So I think the best, most talented software engineers should work on the security software to make it very tight and very clean. It has together with the idea that, the best solution is the simplest one, but not simpler. Okay, so that not simpler is very important. It's simplest, but if it's not sophisticated enough, it doesn't cover all the use case, then it's too simple. It's not the best solution. And so all of this idea make me think, I still help the team in design software. I see the variation of user experience, of security, of attack, and so on. And so I'm useful with that. And as you can see, I spend a lot of time thinking how to articulate our vision better. So I'm also a marketing person.
It sounds like you really enjoy your job. I can feel the passion from you when you're talking about your job. But do you find sometimes like you may be too hands-on and you don't know when to step back? Or do you find that actually you know when to draw the line and say, okay, I'm just going to leave it to my guys to deal with?
I am lazy myself. I try to do that. But of course, sometimes if we fail to do something or if we seemingly will fail and so on, I have to try to jump in and so on. But one of the best decisions I had maybe 15 years ago was not to be in the support email anymore. Otherwise, I see all the support requests and it's like hundreds of emails a day, right? And
you want to be the expert on everything, right? You want to see everything and know what's going on.
I need it too, but I'm happy if I can be lazy and do less.
Oh, I'm sure lazy is not the right word. Not for you, not with all the work that you do. So thank you for that. Now, in terms of growth and stabilization, I do like to ask people, is your company always in a stage of growth, or do you take a time back and say, okay, let's stabilize before we move on to the next growth session?
We are not there where we should be. So I don't have a pause for now.
It's all growth, right? Growth.
Yeah, I'm still have to do it. Yes.
That's perfect. I think a lot of people will be delighted to hear that from you.
You see, it happened today now, okay? What we do, I think will change the cybersecurity space. I think so. I strongly believe so. And I'm lazy, but I have to go out and I talk more to preach for the vision because it is correct.
Is it a hard thing to sell to people? Are they really interested in this? Or is it something that they just have to accept is a necessity?
It's a hard thing. I mean, I believe that everywhere I give presentation, I talk, people understand me. I'm kind of successful. But from there to make a dent in the real thing is a long story.
I can imagine. And we are slowly coming to the end of the interview, but just before we finish, I would like to ask you a question, which I ask everyone. So imagine that there's someone watching this now, watching you, and they want to be an entrepreneur. They want to start their own business, but maybe they have some doubts, or maybe they're not sure whether they have the ability to do it. What advice would you give to them?
Thinking back and all kind of thing, I think the main thing I have, which is maybe different from others and non-entrepreneur, is I believe I can make a difference. I can change things, and having the freedom to change, having the luxury of the freedom to do what you do and what you believe in is important. And if the people have strong enough of that feeling, then they can be the entrepreneur. It is hard work. I don't successfully do everything. There's a lot of time I fail and so on. A lot of time I'm asking myself what I'm doing and so on. But in order to fulfill your desire of making a difference, doing something you believe in, you should do it.
Inspirational words. And what a nice way to end this interview with a powerful speech. Thank you so much again for taking the time to speak with us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you again. That was Thi Nguyen-Huu, CEO at WinMagic Corp.